There lie many horrors beneath the waters of the Song of Ice and Fire, as Planetos is teeming with exotic and mythical life. In the last part of this series on cryptids and Aswath, we looked at the great beasts of the sea, including leviathans, krakens, and sea dragons. You don't need to have seen any of the previous 3 videos in this series, which have covered everything from unicorns and mammoths to sphinxes and fire lions, but my channel is very small, at under 400 subscribers, so if you are able, please do check them out. It would provide a significant boost to my channel. Today we look at the sentient aquatic races rumored to exist, including mermaids, deep ones, and the squishers. Be these creatures real or not, their stories and myths tell us a great deal about the world of ice and fire and its themes. And no, I'm not going to go into the Varys is a mermaid theory, but that theory shockingly does have more evidence than people give it credit for. Mermaids in Planetos, just like the real Earth, are ubiquitous in the tales of sailors and pirates. The difficulty lies in discerning what is real and what is merely tale. Tales of merlings are everywhere, from the coat of arms on House Manderley to the jokes of the small folk. The accounts we hear of beautiful mermaids who act as the wives and fantasies of sailors are almost certainly all not real, but we do get much scarier stories of a different version of merlings, stories which just might carry an inkling of truth. In the Far East, as well as throughout the history of A Song of Ice and Fire, we hear haunting stories of near demon-level mermaids, which kidnap careless fishermen and eat and kill hapless sailors. These mermaids, which also occupy the Shivering Sea, have pale white skin and jet black scales. These haunting mermaids are closely tied with Ironborn mythology, as the Grey King, who is said to have ruled the Ironborn for 1,007 years after killing a sea dragon, Naga, apparently took a mermaid as his wife, so his kids could walk on both the land and the sea. Now the myth of the Grey King is just that, a myth. But the word myth means story, not complete falsehood. I wonder what real events, if any, this story evolved from. I am personally struck by the similarity of the story of the Grey King to the story of the Night King. Not only are the names vague and similar, the Night King took a mysterious, non-human sentient being as his bride so that his children would fulfill an alliance between the two species, on the border of the snow and the earth, while the Grey King took a mysterious, non-human sentient being as his bride so that his children could be emissaries on the border of the land and the sea. Perhaps these are 2 different versions of a similar event, as there are a few ties between the Merlings and others as well. The best evidence for the existence of mermaids is our lovely jester Patchface. For even if you are speculative of the existence of any water-based magic in Aswath, Patchface is undeniably a supernatural phenomenon. The Fool is Aswath's version of the creepy clown trope, as he was a court jester who was brought back for the 3 Baratheon brothers when they were but boys. But the ship carrying him and the patriarch of House Baratheon, Steffon Baratheon, was sunk. 3 days later, Patchface's body, clearly dead, washed up on shore, but after being handled by those sent to bury the dead, Patchface coughed up water and sat up. Patchface now remains somewhat competent as a court jester, but the remarkable wit he was hired for, along with any memory of his life before the shipwreck, is all but gone. Patchface speaks in riddles, possesses an odd sideways walk, and rarely stays still, quiet, or coherent. However, what we do see of Patchface's odd ramblings and interjections is quite haunting, as we as readers have additional context in-universe characters do not. Most notably, Patchface has successfully predicted the Red Wedding, the coming of the Whites and the Others, and the Battle of the Blackwater. In fact, all of Patchface's prophecies focus on death and bloodshed, and Melisandre sees him surrounded by skulls and blood multiple times in her visions. It makes sense with his supernatural return from death, but also ties him with the others in a few more ways, as not only is he familiar with their existence, he is thematically linked with the others, and even speaks of joining them on occasion. But back to how all this relates to mermaids. Patchface speaks of mermaids on several occasions, and combined with what we do know, mermaids seem to be the only probable explanation for his revival. And this is offered in-universe a few times by multiple different people. Mermaids' close ties with death and kidnapping also thematically fit, as well as literally fit with what the others do, and even though that's just a thematic connection, it could also really play into our coming story if it turns out that mermaids and others are in league with each other, as then Westeros is already surrounded. But if Patchface was raised by mermaids, how would that even work? Well, let's look back to the Ironborn's religion of the drowned god for some possible explanations. After all, every major religion seems to play with resurrection in some way. The old gods and the children of the forest seem to have cold hands, and a few others has Beric, Stoneheart, and possibly Melisandre, and many other Firewights. The Great Other has the others. The many-faced god is literally all about death and seems to have the ability to preserve your face and identity after you die. And the Seven, well, this one's a little weaker, but I would argue that Qyburn fits into the category, as the Seven are very institutionalized political religion, which don't really interact with magic, and Qyburn's science-y approach and kind of anti-magic also lines up with that, at least thematically. The drowned god already plays around with resurrection through its post-drowning CPR baptisms, which is identical to what Patchface went through, but his experience was much more extreme and latent. The religion of the drowned god is still fairly mysterious and undiscovered, even though we do have extensive monologues from Aaron Dampire's POV about its workings, beliefs, and mythology. We already touched a little on the Grey King, who is Jesus parallel descended into the waves when he was alive and now rules at the drowned god's right hand. His extended lifespan stems from his close ties to the drowned god directly, and he had many close interactions with mermaids as well, not just his wife and kids. Aaron also thinks on the drowned god's version of heaven, which includes mermaids and crabs which serve great feasts and carry out the whims of the faithful, kind of like the roles of Valkyries and angels. Again, not much which we can actually verify, but the takeaway to me is that mermaids directly serve the drowned god, be he a real Lovecraftian being or merely a concept, and mermaids are the reason that Patchface lives. Surprisingly, we have stories of other sentient humanoid aquatic races throughout the world of Ice and Fire. Many of these are overt references by Martin to Lovecraft, but as he leans more into the Lovecraftian angle with the drowned god and Euron's plans in the Winds of Winter, they are definitely worth going over, even if they may be no more than myths to explain natural phenomenon, which I personally find unlikely. Lovecraft's Deep Ones from Shadow over Innsmouth are apparently already in Planetos. There are a few differing accounts on what these things might actually be, but they really do wear their inspiration heavily on the sleeve. Aquatic fish humans who can mate with humans to produce like weird hybrid things. There are possible links to Merlings here as well, and it is posited that their existence is what caused the existence of the drowned god religion. It's also proposed to explain the link with the oily black stone that shows up throughout the world of Planetos. Again, this is additional evidence that the drowned god is like some Lovecraftian Great Old One, a god that dwells beneath the waves, so powerful it remains indifferent to humanity and the other aquatic races which serve it, highlighting the horrific cosmic insignificance of humanity. Continuing on Lovecraftian inspirations in Aeswaf, the Old Ones are also present in Planetos. These are even more mythical and less likely to exist than the Deep Ones, but are aquatic gods which occupied the waters of the mysterious and difficult to explore island of Lang. In fact, all explorers that go to Lang that aren't even killed return mad. Kind of sounds like Lovecraft to me. Old Ones also show up in one other place, as Thousand Islanders worship fish-shaped gods and idols which they sacrifice sailors to. The Thousand Islanders look super weird too, kind of like some weird fish monster vampire hybrid, yet despite living on small islands, they have a fanatical fear of the water, to the extent they won't even touch the water under threat of death. So perhaps these Old Ones are real, and one of them lives on as the drowned god, lurking around the seas of the Thousand Islands and Greater Planetos. Personally, I do think so, but the reasoning is not really as evidence-based as it should be, and there isn't much here, more based on like speculation, themes, coming plot points in the Winds of Winter, and Martin's personal inspirations. Now the keen among you would have noticed that I have not mentioned squishers yet. Squishers may be a bit of the meme in the fandom, and this is somewhat justified, but they are worth at least a mention in the context of sentient aquatic species. Squishers occupy only stories, though there are many accounts and some of these are nearly credible, as apparently one cannot tell a squisher is a squisher until viewed up close, when its fishy features and scales in place of hair are made more apparent. Squishers are actually very similar to the deep ones we see described in physical depiction as well as patterns of behavior. The residents of 1,000 Islands who worship the Old Ones also sort of resemble squishers in some features, and so does House Burrell in Westeros. So it is possible squishers are deep ones, and they may actually exist in some separate race capable of crossbreeding with humans, resulting in these fishy humanoids throughout Planetos, while rarely directly involving themselves in human affairs. Again, we can't really be sure, and it's sort of a more Lovecraftian concept. There's a few other weird sentient aquatic species, which appear to be humanoid. Alongside many other myths of mermaids and fish gods, we hear stories of two other aquatic races. Selkies are humans able to shapeshift into seals, actually from Norse mythology in the real world, and are only name-dropped once in the world of Ice and Fire. However, House Farwind of our modern story is said to be able to skin change into sea animals, and it remains possible that this mysterious house is comprised mostly of Skelkies. We also hear accounts of so-called walrus men, but we get no other accounts of these species aside from this name drop, so we literally have no clue what these things could be. Perhaps some shape-shifting race similar to Selkies using like walruses instead, but we literally don't know. Or perhaps they're just a unique ethnicity of early humanity on Planetos. We aren't given any textual clues at all. But that's the whole point of the waters of A Song of Ice and Fire. We really don't know anything at all. Sure, it's possible they are peaceful waters with little out of the ordinary, but there is such a wide variety of what horrible monsters that could arise out of the deep, from a race of vengeful mermaids to Lovecraftian gods, that Aesop really paints the ocean as an unexplored and terrifying domain. So while we don't know what is real and what is just story, it might be better that it stay that way, and that these monsters remain as myths. And that's the way Martin likes it, with his Gardner style of writing. For example, phantom tortoises are name-dropped by XXD, but Martin refuses to give us any other information aside from the name Phantom Tortoise. This goes to show how open-ended the magical system in Aesop really is. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all very much for watching through this whole thing to the end. The series will continue soon, likely with a look at frozen magical beasts, such as ice spiders and ice dragons. But we're yet to see. I'll have to do my research. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to respond and take those into consideration. Other than that, if you could like this video or maybe consider subscribing if you are able, as my channel is very small, and literally one subscription or like does wonders for this channel's growth. Thank you all very much once again. Do take care, and I will see you all next time.